Okay, so we've solved systems by graphing. And when we solve a system by graphing, we're looking for where they intersect. And we all know that lines don't always intersect, so sometimes there could be no solution. We also know that a line could lay on top of another line, and there would be infinite solutions. We're now going to look at substitution. How do we solve by substitution so that we don't have to graph it? So the first step is to isolate your variable. All that means is get a letter by itself, and you can see that y is already by itself. So I'm going to circle the right side of this. Y equals this, and since it's y, I'm going to substitute in for y. And I'm going to rewrite this as 2x minus 3, but instead of y, in parentheses, I'm going to write negative 3x plus 16 equals negative 4. And I'm now, if you notice, I now have only an x. And so I'm now going to solve this for x. So we've been solving equations, so my first step has to be to distribute. So this is going to be 2x plus 9x minus 48 equals negative 4. So that's distribute. I'm going to combine like terms, so the 2x plus the 9x are on the same side of the line. So I'm going to get 11x minus 48 equals negative 4. I'm going to do my adding or subtracting first. So I'm going to add the 48. I'm going to get 11x equals 44. Now I'm going to do my dividing or multiplying by the reciprocal. I'm going to divide by 11, and I get x equals 4. Yay! And everyone screams, I'm done! And we know that we're not done because this solving a system means that we're finding an ordered pair. So I only found the x. Where's the y? So I'm going to take this y, this x, and I'm going to plug it back into here, right there. So I know that y equals negative 3, plug in the 4, plus 16. So negative 12 plus 16 is 4, and that would be my answer. Okay, now in this one, remember the first step is isolate your variable. I don't have a letter by itself this time, and everyone wants to jump in and solve for y, but in substitution, you are looking for a coefficient of 1. I expect to see that in your notes tomorrow. Coefficient is a fancy word for the number in front of a letter. So the number in front of this x is 3. There's a 2. There's a negative 4. What's in front of this x? In front of this x is a 1. That's the variable I'm going to isolate. So I'm going to add 4y to this side. And I get x equals, I can write it either way, negative 12 plus 4y. And so I've done the first step. I have isolated my variable. Now x equals this. Okay? And my other equation is this one right here. So I'm going to take this, and since this is x, I'm plugging it in for x. I'm substituting in there. So I'm going to rewrite this as 3, but now I'm substituting x. I'm going to distribute. I'm going to combine like terms. I'm going to add that 36 over. And I'm going to divide by 14. Y equals 3. Okay, I'm going to stop writing all these little steps in between. So if you need to write it down, I added 36 here, and then I divided by 14. Okay, but remember, I'm not done. I know that y is 3, but I need to find out what x is. So I'm going to take that y, and I'm going to plug it in here, because that equation says x equals negative 12 plus 4 times y. So that's negative 12 plus 12, so x is going to be 0. And that would be my answer. That's where these two lines will intersect at that point. So now we're going to look at elimination. When do we use elimination? We use elimination when our coefficients are not 1. I don't have a 1. So I'm going to look to do elimination. I need to eliminate one of these variables so that I can solve the equation. So if you look on this one, which is pretty simple, the 2 and the negative 2, if I add them, 2 plus negative 2 will cancel, will eliminate. 6 plus 10 gives me 16y, and 17 plus 15 gives me 32. If I divide by 16, I get y equals 2. Isn't that so much easier? Now, the part that I don't like is when I plug back in, I have to plug back into, I got y equals 2, so I'm plugging back into y, into here, which means it's a little harder to get the other variable, but not really, it's just solving an equation. So I'm going to plug my 2 back in this y, and I get the right color, 2x plus 6, but I'm going to plug in that y equals 17. 2x plus 12 equals 17. 2x, I'm going to subtract the 12, and I'm going to divide by 2. So x equals 2.5. So again, we use elimination when I don't have a 1 as a coefficient. Well, what do we do here? We don't have a coefficient of 1, so I can't substitute. We don't have, if I add these two together or add these two together, they don't cancel out. So I'm going to have to force them to cancel out. I'm going to look at my variable coefficients. The greatest common factor here is 12. The greatest common factor here is 4. I'm going to force these both to be a 4. So I'm going to multiply everything in the top by 2. And I'm going to put that here. So 2 times 4x gives me 8x. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4y. And 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. So now this equation has really gone away. And look what happens right here. Now if I add these two, a positive and a negative, they will cancel each other out. So I get 5x equals negative 20. Divide by 5, negative 4. So again, I have negative 4 as my x. I can pick any equation, the one I started with, the second one, or the one I changed it to. I don't like using the one I changed it to in case I changed it wrong, so I always go back to one of the originals. So I'm going to plug x right in here. I get negative 3, plug in the negative 4, plus 4y equals 12. This becomes 12. Negative times a negative is a positive. I'm going to subtract 12. Uh-oh. Both of these cancel out. I only have 4y. But the equal sign doesn't go away. Don't forget, 12 minus 12 is 0. If I divide by 4, 0 divided by 4 is 0. So the y would be 0. And this would be my answer. Last example. Again, I don't have a 1. And none of these will add to cancel each other out. So my greatest common factor here is 14. My greatest common factor here is 6. Neither of these numbers are 14. Neither of these are 6. So I'm going to have to force both of them to be the numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at these two. And I'm going to multiply this top, everything by 3. That will make that a positive 6. Now, I have to figure out what number to multiply that will make that a -6. So I'm going to multiply by a -2. Then the +6 and the -6 will cancel out. I'm going to pause, go ahead and multiply that out. If you multiplied it right, you'll see that now these two will eliminate each other. That's why it's called elimination. We eliminated the y. So if I add, I'm going to get 25x, this eliminates, equals -25. If I divide both sides by 25, I get -1. So I know my x is -1. Doesn't matter which of these I plug it into. I could plug in here, or here, or here, or here. It doesn't matter. The problem is I multiplied on this, and if I multiplied wrong, I can't get the right answer. So always go back to an original. I'm going to plug the -1, and I'm just going to go into that x. So I'm going to have -2, plug in that -1, plus 3y equals 29. -2 times -1, subtract 2, divide by 3, y equals 9. If you need those notes on there, subtract 2, divide by 3. Y equals 9, so now I'm going to put 9 in here, and this is my answer. You guys have a fantastic weekend.